Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on Saturday. It's Saturday the 9th. This is our first weekend of the new term, and you are listening to Because the Universe, your now weekly satirical science radio show with him, Harry Manners, the red-headed great sage and eminent junkie.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And he is Matthew Lane, master of the rotary blade, inveterate fairy light enthusiast, and supposed person.
Master of the rotary blade.
Oh, yes, all in jokes.
You.
All in
hate
jokes.
You.
Yes, I thought I'd start off with something
essentially
evil.
all of my fingers.
Yes, you can.
Because I'd bought a craft knife. It was a spinning craft knife, and the blade was locked. And I managed to just bleed everywhere.
All through your own flesh. Well done.
And I came up the stairs to you with my fingers in my mouth. Harry, help me! Get a plaster!
Yes, the most sanguine person I've ever met. Well done.
Great. Thanks.
Anyway.
Well, thanks for that. So, hello.
Yes.
This is exciting. We're back.
We are indeed back. It's great to be here. A lot of exciting stuff has kind of been going on since we've been off air, as usual.
It has so much has been happening.
Yeah, so it's going to take a while to trawl through that. I think that's going to be the focus of today, isn't it?
It is indeed. I've got a just incredible number of articles open right now on my laptop for us to chat about. Just a huge number.
Indeed.
Some hilarious stuff has gone down.
Well, which is good for us.
It is good for us because it means we can have a bit of a laugh. So you may have noticed that it's not the morning.
No, it's not the morning. It's dark
outside.
It is dark.
Heading towards winter.
Yeah.
The reason it's not the morning is because the time of the show has changed.
Yep, it has.
So because the universe is now still on a Saturday, but it's
is
7 o'clock instead of 10 a.m. So it's 7 p.m. instead of 10 a.m. and we are now every single week.
Oh, nice.
Yay.
Yes, and you lucky people get to hear from us every single week.
You do. And to make, well, actually, we'll come on to some of the exciting things we've got planned in a moment.
Yeah.
But for now, let's just break straight to a song, and then we'll get this thing underway.
Indeed. So we are going to go out, first off, on Give Me a Sign by the Vaccines. And we are back. This is Because the Universe, and we are now on a weekly schedule at 7 p.m, and we are now going to go over to our news section of the show.
Before we do,
we are,
just have to
you've got to correct yourself, yes.
It's not the 9th, it's the 10th. My watch was wrong.
Yes, you're not listening to us from the past.
Yep.
So we've got a new feature, haven't we, on our news bit of the show?
We have. We've got a couple of things that we want to do.
We have. So this is the first of them. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of explain, but feel free to correct me if I've muddled it up. So what we're going to do is you've got 3 facetious, funny news stories.
As I always do.
Always. But now you're going to leave out a section of the headline that I have to guess.
Yes.
Right.
Because they're so unbelievable.
All right. So it's going to be a challenge.
It is going to be a challenge.
All right. It sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Hit me.
Okay. There are so many. I've got so many here to choose from. Okay. UK man receives what everyone's calling the world's first blank blank.
2 words.
Yep.
So
UK man receives what everyone's calling the world's first blank blank.
The world's first hip replacement. No.
Do you want a clue?
Yeah, go on.
This is another article on the same thing. So it's a different headline.
Okay, right.
The same thing. Man given 8-inch blank blank after losing use of blank in an accident.
I think I know what this might be.
What do you think it might be, Harry?
Is it an artificial penis?
It is. Yes. UK man receives what everyone's calling the world's first bionic penis.
That's amazing.
So 8 inches long. I had to look up the average penis length just to try and get a comparison, and it's something like between 5.5 and 6.3 inches.
Okay. So,
8 inches.
So they were generous. Can I ask some questions on the mechanic of this without being too crass? Do you have information?
You can try. There's a very limited amount of information available.
Is this a working device?
It uses fluids from an implant in his belly to inflate tubes along its length.
I see.
You're going to love this. It's controlled by a button on his...
leg?
No.
Face?
No.
Is it something disgusting?
Come on.
Is it his scrotum?
Yes! I mean,
excellent.
They've gone all out here to...
Wow.
Yay, science!
So, I see. So if he sits down wrong... On a bicycle, maybe.
8 inches as well. That'd be embarrassing.
Yeah.
What a way to start the show, eh?
Excellent. Thank
what
you
a way.
very much
Go on,
for
you've
that.
got a new story.
I have, yes. So the first one that I've got is actually a serious one.
Okay.
Also ridiculous, but serious. So Donald Trump has taken...
Oh, I love that, man.
Yeah, I know. So he's taken a case to the Supreme Court, challenging the erection of an offshore wind farm close to his golf course and surrounding estate in Aberdeenshire.
Okay, so what's his reasoning? What's his justification?
Well, you see, these 11 turbines, which are part of Scotland's renewable energy programme, are going to spoil the view.
Of his estate?
Yes.
And he's going to the Supreme Court?
Yes, and he's been fighting it thus far for 2 years.
For 2?
Yes, since it was first announced as even a prospect, he's been resisting this, and apparently he's furious.
Is he?
Yes, because, you can't have that, can you? You can't have this ridiculous wealthy man having his golf course view spoiled because of all these poor people who need energy. There is nothing more to be said about this. We could just let that lie, really.
He's such a swell guy.
Yeah.
Gotta love Donald.
Yeah. I mean, we've said enough about this already. I think we could just move on to your second one, really.
Okay. Another blank in here.
Okay.
Woman gets bacterial infection in her knee from blanking too much.
Sitting.
Nope.
Chewing?
Nope. You're closer.
Really?
Yeah.
Something to do with the mouth?
Kind of, yeah.
Drinking?
Nope.
Talking?
No. Do you want to know?
Yeah, go on.
Flossing.
But
Woman gets bacterial infection in
Flossing.
her knee from flossing too much. She had a hip replacement.
explain yourself.
She had a hip replacement 5 years ago,
Okay.
and her knee became very, very painful and swollen.
Right.
So they went into her knee and they drained a load of fluids. And when they analysed the fluids, they found that the replacement joint in her knee had been infected with a certain sort of bacterium. But what's weird about it is it's only found in the mouth,
Right.
where it rapidly colonises clean tooth surfaces.
Okay.
So how did it end up in her knee joints is the question.
Right. Is there an answer?
The answer goes like this. She had voluntarily started a vigorous dental flossing routine, and so much so that her gums were bleeding every day.
Right.
And it spread from her mouth through her bloodstream.
Right, so the
to the knee
bacteria
implant.
got in through the flossing wounds down and migrated to her knee.
But by virtue of the fact she had a metallic implant, that was the kind of surface similar to the calcium in your teeth.
That they would grow on. I see.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to ask, how does a bionic implant get infected? It's made of metal.
Yeah.
Right.
So there we go.
Okay. Fair enough.
Whoop, whoop.
You wouldn't have expected that, but
No.
Okay. Fine. I think we'll move on to my next story.
Yep.
Then. I'm just going to draw up the fact that El Nino is here.
What?
El Nino is here.
Like the coffee shop, El Nino's.
No. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, El Nino is a recurring weather pattern. So it involves circulation of winds and ocean currents in the Pacific Ocean. Recurs every 4 to 7 years or so. Lasts between 1 or 2 years. Essentially, you can boil it down to it's a bulk transport of moisture from Oceania and Indonesia over to the Americas, and they get flooded, whilst Oceania gets droughts. This happens every now and then. And this summer, the current cycle is reaching its maximum. So they are predicting that it's going to be the worst since 1998. They're currently preparing for storm fronts, cyclones, typhoons, and hurricanes aplenty across both seaboards. An estimated 20,000 lives are estimated to be at risk, and a damage estimation in the area of $100 billion. Already, there's been a heat wave in India.
So this is all just this year?
Yeah. This is within the last couple of months.
Oh, gosh.
There's been a heat wave in India just this month. It's killed hundreds of people, caused outbreak of dengue fever, and the temperatures in Oceania and Indonesia have skyrocketed. There's been lots of schools closed, lots of, hospitals are inundated with people having heat flush and heat stroke, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely going to be an example of how global warming is going to affect these kind of recurrent weather patterns. And everyone's hunkering down.
Oh dear.
Because there's nothing, of course, you can stop. This is a major weather phenomenon, the likes of which we still don't understand at all. And circumnavigating, even making any predictions based on it is still incredibly difficult.
And what was it you called it?
El Nino.
El Nino.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know what that stands for. I imagine obviously it's Spanish or something.
Acronym?
No, it's
Spanish.
ELNINO, one of those squiggles on the top. Yeah. Showing my magnificent knowledge there of language, my linguistic ability. Yes. Okay, so you've got another story.
Okay. Homeopathy conference ends in chaos after delegates blank.
Kill the presenter.
Nope.
Burn their shoes.
Nope.
Hint.
Okay. Homeopathy conference ends in chaos after delegates take blank blank.
Their medicine.
No.
Take.
Hallucinogenic drugs.
Of course.
By accident as well.
Of course, by accident. I mean, they would have diluted it a million times. They thought, I'll be fine, and then forgot to dilute it, I imagine. Is that what's happening?
It was just that some mushrooms got in there.
I see. All right.
Basically.
So I imagine, actually, this is probably compulsory for all conferences involving homeopaths. You would have to be that far off your rocker.
Yep.
Really?
As in.
So this is a major, genuine conference.
Yeah, big homeopathy conference, and all that happened was they accidentally got their ingredients muddled up.
Accidentally, as
yeah.
often happens, when you keep your vials of hallucinogenic drugs right next to
your bottle of water that is your homeopathic remedy, because we do just have to say a word on this.
Yes.
Usually these things are diluted up to, if not more than 30 times. And to give you an idea of what that means, say you have your extract, and we should say here that the extract doesn't actually treat the malady in the first place.
No,
but you have your extract.
To it.
You dilute that once, you then take that, dilute that again, and then 30 more times.
Mm-hmm.
That corresponds to one molecule of your extract.
Non-drug.
One molecule of your non-drug in a sphere of water the size of the sun.
That's incredible.
Right? There's nothing there.
So
but
for all
if you
intents and purposes,
accidentally take a hallucinogenic drug, then there is something there.
Of course there is, yeah. So we're just going to reiterate that there are probably more impurities accidentally in whatever thing you take.
Yeah.
Than the active ingredient.
Yeah.
When we say active in massive inverted commas.
Yes.
Okay.
Active
comma.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I've got my last story, which again is pretty serious. So, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. I want to talk about that.
Okay, I don't know what it is. So this is new to me.
I mean, obviously, I was going to go for the one about physics because we're physicists, but I thought that was obvious. So I went for the chemistry one. Very exciting. It's gone to 3 people who have done research into mechanisms by which cells repair DNA damage. So it's gone to Thomas Lindahl, Paul Modrich, and Aziz Sankar, and they all worked independently in 3 different institutions over the last 40 years. To illuminate all these wonderful mechanisms. So, this is the most solid confirmation of the notion of cancer's emergence. So we've got a direct quote here. If you do not have DNA repair, we would have a lot more cancer. So that comes from Klaus Glostaffen, who's a member of the Nobel Committee.
Okay.
So to give you a little bit of an idea of their individual achievements, Lindahl has discovered a series of enzymes called base excision repair, and it constantly fights the decay of DNA, which is due to the constant bombardment of molecules inside the nucleus. And it's just a kind of anti-senescence mechanism. It just stops the whole thing falling apart, and it's a constant process. And Sankar has discovered a method by which cells repair UV damage.
So is this all repairing of DNA?
Oh, yes, a direct repair of DNA, and they're just kind of passive processes that go on all the time.
Okay.
And we're just talking about, the UV damage that Sankar worked on. It used, again, a different series of enzymes that cut away lesions which are formed on the DNA due to ionization from the UV. And then finally, Modrich found out how the cell corrects badly transcripted DNA during cell division. And so you essentially get mismatched pairs due to misplaced nucleotides on the sense or no sense strands. And then these pick and choose which ones to kind of pick out a nucleotide and put the correct one in such that the strands match up. And the committee has stated that this new information will go to understanding the effects of carcinogenic pressures, such as smoking and sunlight, and they'll also go to additional work on producing new drugs which actually complement these processes. So instead of actually having an active drug which tries to go in and like gene therapy and do it itself, it's just to facilitate these processes. Yes, essentially.
Help out your own body and its...
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a bit like epigenetics, isn't it?
It is indeed.
A bit like your environment changing your gene. I think that's a misnomer, isn't it? A lot of people don't realise that your genes change.
Absolutely, and they get turned on and off, bits get stuck on and pulled off all the time.
I know you've read a book on it that I want to read. But there are these markers, correct me if I'm wrong, there are these markers that can be removed or added that determine whether or not a genotype is expressed as its phenotype.
Yes. So there's two major families of these kind of proteins which are stuck on and pulled off due to environmental pressures by enzymes in the nucleus. And if you haven't read this book, it's called The Epigenetics Revolution. I absolutely recommend it. Do go and read it. It's absolutely fascinating because, as you just said, this isn't well known. This isn't even introduced anywhere in education, as far as I can tell, at least up until 4-degree level. You know,
Yeah.
I did the A level and I didn't know anything about this. But it's been going on since the 1990s, which I found the most surprising thing. That it's been around for a while. People have known about the fact that DNA is just kind of the skeleton, the barest notion of how our genes actually function.
Yeah.
And then it's all of these additional things which can be completely modified by environmental pressures and cross generations. I think the major study which we can bring up and everyone will be able to emote with is starvation due to the Holocaust was monitored by an extensive study, and their descendants showed remarkably amplified numbers of certain proteins attached to their DNA, which amplified their ability to absorb protein and nutrients due to their starvation.
So they were able to absorb protein and nutrients much better.
Yes, they had to do it much more efficiently because their parents' generation had to do so because they, of course, due to selection pressures, the only people who survived in their parents' generation were those who had those abilities.
Yeah. Many social phenomena or collective phenomena or obvious expressions of who we are as individuals that are complicated are as a result of epigenetics rather than just genetics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we should do an entire show on epigenetics, I think.
We should.
So this would be a good time just to tell people, if you don't know, if you're freshers and you're listening, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like 7:30. You should be out doing something ludicrous.
Why are you
Not
listening to us?
that we suggest that you do that.
Of course not. Of course not.
But hi, welcome to Rock University. It's lovely to have you. And if you're back for a new year like we are, then hello again. But basically, the way this show works, what we normally do is we normally have 2 guests on. Usually one is a science student and one is a not science student. We're hoping we might even get some non-students, either professors or just random, well, not random, but
Random
people off the
at
street,
the bus stop,
as it were. Which will be really interesting. And then we have some sort of scientific or technological or generally something that has the underpinnings of logic and rationale to it, some question, some issue, and we discuss.
We do, and usually it goes completely off the rails, but we make a huge amount of progress as well.
We do. So that's the way it normally works. So please do get a hold of us, contact us either by Facebook, we have a Facebook page, or email us at becausetheuniverse@aol.com, or by Twitter. What's the Twitter handle?
The Twitter is @CosTheUniverse, COS, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/becausetheuniverse.
Yeah, do get a hold of us either if you'd like to come on as a guest, or if you'd like to suggest a show topic for us, and
Yes.
we will do that. We will.
We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you just have a generic question about anything that you find interesting, hopefully it'll be connected to the show. Even if it's not, just vaguely scientific, absolutely write in and we'd love to hear from you.
So that's exciting.
It is.
We'll be getting some people in and discussing some big stuff over
Indeed.
the course of this term. But for now, we're just gonna focus on what's been going on over the summer.
There's a lot to catch up on.
There is a lot to catch up on. But let's break for another song while we have a look at what we want to talk about next.
Sure. So this is Gibraltar by Beirut. We'll be right back.
12:51.
Hello there. We're back.
We're back.
Yeah, we are indeed. This is Because the Universe. You're listening to us at what is it? It's the 10th. Saturday, the 10th of October.
Not the 9th. It's
Not
the
the 9th. It's the 10th. I nearly fell into the same trap.
That
yes,
I did,
this is Because the Universe, and we are catching up on all the summer's juicy, sciencey news.
So much.
Yes, indeed.
So much.
So, are we going to move on to a little bit about Mars?
A little bit. I think this is the
Just a
biggest
smidgen.
news story of the summer.
It is. Yes.
Go for it. I know you love space, so
I
this
do.
is yours.
Yes, it's mine stuff. So, there is water on the surface of Mars.
But didn't we already know there was water on the surface of... What's so special about this water, Harry?
Well, it's liquid.
It's liquid?
Yeah. So we've known for some time that Mars actually has quite a lot of water, usually locked in the poles or in permafrost, or actually just, in the regolith, which is the name for the soil, and dust, which is all over Mars's surface. But now we've actually found evidence, and it was actually discovered by an undergraduate student on their project, but there is actually liquid water on the surface itself. And this is due to the fact that there are these salt deposits on Mars, which lower the boiling point, and therefore it doesn't boil off, doesn't escape to space, nor does it freeze. Therefore, it's liquid, and it's not exactly liquid in the sense that we're thinking of. There are no lakes or oceans or even ponds. It's more like mud, goop. It sifts to the surface.
Okay.
And
it sounds less impressive when you say there's mud on Mars.
It does. So of course we have to forgive them for being marginally sensationalist, but there is indeed water on Mars.
Okay, liquid water.
Yep.
On Mars.
There is.
And in the great search for life in the universe, this is taking us a step closer.
Well, potentially. In terms of local life, it's claimed that there, of course, is no real sense to expect that there will be microbial life even in these areas, because the very salts that make it liquid make it uninhabitable for any form of life that we know of. It would be just too hostile an environment. Yeah. But it's certainly worth investigating, and I believe that the Discover Mars rover planned for 2020 is our best shot at going and finding out about this. Of course, they are planning to land nowhere near it. It's now being designated, these areas, the sites which are essentially off limits. The international committees that govern where spacecraft can land.
So these Martian swamps are too dangerous.
Well, the international committees that designate where spacecraft can land put off limits these kind of areas, just in case we crash and destroy something that's very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we wouldn't want to contaminate
absolutely
the water, would we either?
So, of course, we can now mention that spacecraft go through extensive sterilization programs.
Clean rooms.
Indeed, they are built in clean rooms. So, I mean, you can go online and see lots of pictures of people who look like they should be in a surgery of some kind.
It is impressive. I was at Surrey University a couple of years ago, because they have the Surrey Space Centre.
Right.
And walked past one of their clean rooms where they were building satellites. And there's just massive sheets of plastic and people in suits and masks. And it's exactly like you would imagine from a film.
Yeah. But all it's the bubble hats and the plastic and the gloves and everything. Yeah, it's incredible. And they go through these lengths to make sure that we don't contaminate space and potential alien life. Also, there is, I think we should also mention that there's a large part of this reason is the fact that we often bring things back from space. And the idea is that we don't want to send out local life to then be exposed to the mutagenic factors involved in harsh radiations of space, and then bring it back and it's mutated into something horrific and dangerous.
Oh, that's scary.
Yes.
That's scary. So you have heard us right. There is Mars.
There is Mars.
There is Mars.
Breaking news, everybody.
Oh dear,
there
it's
is
too
Mars.
late. This is really hard.
The sky is really there.
There is mud on Mars.
Yes.
Breaking news. But okay, so we found mud, we found liquid water on the surface of Mars. Okay, taking us maybe a step closer to answering one of the universe's great questions: is there life? And I think we've got to ask ourselves: water on Mars, is there intelligent life on Earth? Because I'm not convinced.
That was so smooth.
There has been so much news this summer that raises questions about whether or not there is actually any intelligent life on Earth. So we're probably going to spend the next quarter of an hour, to be honest with you.
It'll take that long, at least.
Just having a look at some of the...
yeah. That's a good word for it. I like that.
Some of the those.
Yeah, that sums it up really well. Yeah. So do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, the first one, we have to give a little bit of background because this is going to go in an angle people won't have heard of. Volkswagen.
Yep.
What's been going on with them over the summer, Harry?
Well, it seems that they've got themselves into a little bit of a snafu regarding their emissions tests.
Do seem to have done something silly.
A little, a hiccup.
Yeah.
Maybe,
It's not as bad as completely lying to everyone.
No, it's nowhere near that bad.
Hold on.
Actually.
No. That's exactly what they did, isn't it?
Yeah. Funny that. It's easy to overlook these things, isn't it? It is.
Because you couldn't do it, it's an accident. It's not the sort of thing that you would have to do intentionally.
No, but we have to give them some leeway here. It's so easy when you're in the manufacturing areas to, you often place your evil meters right next to your carbon emissions meeting, facilities. So, it's easy to swap them out.
Yeah.
Put the wrong thing in.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Whoops.
Nobody and it's quite easy that this was the action of one person, one heretic, one fool who was running rampant around the company.
Okay, so what's actually happened is that Volkswagen entirely knowingly have used some clever computer trickery to mean that when their cars are doing emissions tests, the cars know, and they switch slightly with the way that they're working. So the result of the emissions test is always better than it would be in a real world situation, but by quite a sizable percentage.
Yeah, it's no little slight adjustment to just hop below some barrier. They are making massive
and this is not okay. Bearing in mind there are international regulations, there's international laws all around emissions.
Also, Volkswagen make quite a deal of themselves being one of the best companies for emissions. I mean, you can take their Blue Motion program as an example. It's intended as one of the forerunners of the major car companies' environmental programs. And I just wonder how many people have gone out, maybe gone on a few extra day trips thinking, oh, it's okay, I'm saving a lot of emissions, and completely unaware that the Volkswagen engines are actually rather worse than the average, really.
And everyone listening will know what we think about climate change. We'll know what we think about global warming. By 2100, we're expecting a 4 to 6 degree rise. A 4-degree rise corresponds to 40% of the world's population in permanent drought and 40% of all of the wildlife that is left dying off.
Yep.
Population hitting 11.1 billion. Things become very, very, very difficult because of climate change and global warming. This is no longer an issue that's going to be affecting the next generation. We're still going to be around when everything goes to pot.
We can bring in our former shows on Do We Have to Die? People's life expectancies are now so high that it doesn't matter. You can't use the argument, it's not my problem, I'll be dead. It will be here.
Your problem, yeah. And so, really, this large corporation shouldn't be allowed to get away with this because it is I think it's a serious international crime, and that is how it should be branded. And so, what you would be very surprised to find out, Harry, would be a sort of situation where, I don't know, governments like the government of the UK, government of France, government of Germany, big players in the UN and the EU, what you wouldn't expect was if they, having called for a full inspection, a full report into Volkswagen, you wouldn't expect to find out that they've spent the last 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, who knows, nobody's quite sure, years lobbying the EU to not change the way in which it carries out these emissions testing, to give them a 14% loophole.
I see.
Okay, so this is what's been going on. The UK, France, and Germany, their governments have been lobbying to try and prevent new legislation that slightly changes the structure of the loopholes. And yes, what I'm saying here is the governments in the EU design the legislation with loopholes in place. That's the ridiculous thing on its own. But this new legislation is going to close down those loopholes by 14%.
By 14%.
And they've spent the last few years lobbying to prevent that.
Is there any justification given for this?
No. It's just so that their cars don't have to be as efficient.
Right.
And that's disgusting. Because then, of course, Volkswagen know they really can get away with it. The governments that make up these international
it's been
bodies,
treated in the same way as any kind of media snafu, some kind of news company's infraction against some celebrity. It's treated in the same way, I'll resign and then it's fine. I think the CEO did resign, didn't he, I think?
No, I thought he was still there.
Oh, really? Well, that's even worse. But the idea here is that you can just go through the same steps. Any company can just go through a kind of placation process by which they say, oops, sorry, we've got rid of a few people, we've fired someone, we'll plant a few trees and then everyone will be fine with it. As though, there are still millions of cars out there with these horrific lies built into them. There doesn't seem to be any kind of real plan to go about remedying this process or preventing it from happening again.
Not at all. It's completely unacceptable.
In fact, it sets a precedent for just how easy it is.
Yeah. This is a quote from Greg Archer, who's the Clean Vehicles Manager from the respected green think tank Transport and the Environment. He said it is unacceptable that governments which rightly demand an EU inquiry into the VW's rigging of air pollution tests are simultaneously lobbying behind the scenes to continue the rigging of CO2 emissions tests. So UK government, it's not acceptable. Get your act together. We're not happy.
Yeah. Or else.
Or else we'll set Ducky the soft duck on you.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't actually know about Ducky, if you are indeed a fresher, then you can get onto the Raw website and access the webcams. And you can see us live in the studio. And upon the little board here, you can see our mascot and divine master, great sage Ducky himself. He's here with us in the studio.
Yeah. So there's been quite a lot of things kind of along this line, actually. Here's something fun. This year, how much money do you think the richest nations, and it's difficult, I can't entirely find how many nations are being counted here as the richest nations. I expect it's 5 or 6. Realistically, it's going to be the top few richest.
Right.
How much money do you think they've spent this year in taxpayers' dollars subsidizing fossil fuel industries?
Okay. Can I get a rough ballpark? Is it?
It's in the billions.
In the billion. Oh, right. Well, that alone is horrific. Okay, so I'm going to say 5 billion.
5 billion.
Yeah.
Guess again. Higher.
Higher. 20 billion.
Guess again. Higher.
50 billion.
Harry, wrong order of magnitude. $200 billion. And subsidizing fossil fuel industries.
So that is governments directly subsidizing fossil fuel
with taxpayers' money.
With taxpayers' money.
And this isn't from some, not trusted source. This is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, a global forum.
And as you said, these are just the top nations. So, what really should be striking about that is the nations that aren't considered the dominant economies are often larger users of fossil fuels because they're developing nations, and therefore they are establishing infrastructure which requires an enormous consumption of fossil fuels. So this completely ignores the vast majority of fossil fuel use. This is just the bolstering of fossil fuel use in countries which technically can afford not to use them at all.
Yeah, exactly that. But I think to put this in perspective, the global... Another thing this research group have done is they've said, how much money do we globally need to raise each year, realistically, to fight the real-term effects of climate change, right? So what do we do for people whose houses have been destroyed by flooding? What do we do because of what, like you were talking about, that weather pattern?
Yes, El Nino.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
How much? So they're saying that by 2020, we need to be mobilizing $100 billion a year, which means we're already spending double what we would need to mobilize globally.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
So all of this essentially is just for the sake of convenience.
Yeah.
You don't need to do this, and all that money could be spent in subsidizing green energy programs, renewable energy programs. The chief drawback of renewable programs is that it's not a developed technology. It's not matured, and that is because
Nobody's
not funded.
Going to invest in it.
So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. We should probably do a show just on renewables. Because when we say it's not matured, I mean...
In terms of, it's not quite as ridiculously convenient that you just dig it up the ground and set it on fire.
It's not as easy. It's mature tech. It's just not so easy.
That's the thing, is that it's often easy to overlook just how incredibly advanced and wonderful these creations are, and just how liberating they have the potential to be. If we get these established, if we, often we'll do a show on it. But often you can see this little pictogram somewhere on the internet where you cover a tiny portion of the Sahara Desert with solar panels, and that's it. Everyone in the world is set in terms of the energy requirements. And that is only with solar panels which are relatively inefficient compared to the maximum that they can be. So we'll definitely do a show on that.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
It would be a good one. So that was looking at kind of an international issue. Let's try and take it a little closer to home. And focus in on the UK a little bit.
Okay.
It has emerged that two of Britain's, and they're not remaining unnamed. Brilliant, I get to name them. It has emerged that two of Britain's largest energy suppliers are using more coal than they did 10 years ago as a proportion, right? So it's not just they're having to produce more energy, therefore the amount of coal they're needing is going up. It's that the proportion of energy being produced that is being produced from coal is going up.
I see, right.
Than they did 10 years ago, okay?
So despite advances in technology, they are now using more fossil fuels per unit of energy produced.
We've also just given the go-ahead for the largest gas field ever in UK territories in the North Sea.
I see.
So it's British Gas and SSE. Over 40% of the market between them they cover.
Right. And
now use more coal than they did in 2005.
It's interesting because there has been a major shift towards gas. With the UK's energy budget, hasn't there? And yet we are moving towards essentially sliding backwards. It seems every year that everybody says, that something might be a little bit unstable, it might be a bit difficult, therefore more coal. Which you can understand the rhetoric. As we said, it is easier. But things are only set to get more difficult for these kind of technologies, though.
Yeah.
It's only a stopgap, and this kind of argument simply won't work for very long. What you'll end up doing is it will be very easy until it's not, and then it simply will be impossible.
You run out of time, exactly.
Yes. I mean, something that everyone was betting on was the Alaska shale gas, and Shell has just pulled out from its massive exploratory program in Alaska. I believe it's about 40 miles offshore. They've completely ceased operations in the Alaskan Gulf now. Yes, so now that they was expected to hugely increase the world's oil and gas supplies. Now that's simply not going to happen. It was deemed, impractical to actually extract these resources. Yeah,
Saudi Arabia, world's second largest oil exporter after the United States, who is one of the world's richest countries, is running its worst deficit of all time because of fluctuations in the oil markets, because it's becoming more expensive to get a hold of oil. And if we think, we've got austerity over there, that you're not allowed to buy new cars or new furniture because of legislation passed by the Saudi king, as part of austerity.
That goes to show just how bad things are.
Yeah. And just to show really how bad things are, how much, I'm going to give you a time period, and I want you to guess how much of all of the total life on Earth has gone extinct or just died.
Right,
over the course of that time. So from 40 years ago up until now.
Right, and in terms of percentage?
What percentage of all life on Earth?
Or in terms of species, or just the biomass has gone?
Biomass, let's go biomass.
Biomass has gone. Okay, so I'm going to say...
the number of wild animals.
20%.
20%.
Yeah. Higher.
Yep.
30%.
Higher.
Really? Okay, 40%.
50%. Half
of the world's wild animals.
Of all of the wildlife on Earth.
So we're not just talking creatures like big things.
No,
we are talking
everything.
Amphibians and cockroaches and everything. A lot.
And you know when we did Do We Have to Die? Or Can Science Save Us? Or whatever it was.
One of those.
Yeah. And we talked a bit about, maybe we're in an extinction. Maybe this is actually one of the great extinctions.
We did, yeah.
It's now official. This is Earth's 6th mass extinction. It's begun.
Wow. So this is confirmed from a source, some committee somewhere has said
50%. Think about the reduction in biodiversity, and we know how closely related all organisms are in terms of how dependent they are. So, this will affect us.
Yeah, so I know actually the last major mass extinction was the KT boundary extinction 65 million years ago, and that got rid of about 60% of all life. So we're not far off that now. We've accomplished that in 40 years, you said. I believe that took around 1,000 years to happen, and that was from the current theory is a major meteorite impact. And even then that took 1,000 years.
Yep.
So we've managed to do that in 40 years.
Climate deniers, when skeptics say things like, oh no, it's very arrogant to think that humanity could have a real effect on the global climate or global weather patterns or anything like that. I think this just shows what a ludicrous statement that is. We do have a very, very real effect.
It's remarkable. We should note that we are not putting the onus directly on anthropomorphic processes. No. We can't just outright state that human beings cause all of this. But it's hard to ignore the fact that it happens just at the time that we start meddling around on a global scale.
Yeah. I mean, when we do a show on this, we'll flesh it out.
Yeah.
A little bit more. But now on a positive note.
Okay.
Study of 100 billion animals finds that genetically modified organisms are safe.
Ah, really?
Yes.
So, any details? So, exactly what do we mean by safe? So, often there's concerns about you releasing some kind of modified crop into the environment. It takes over, becomes some kind of hideous, triffid, and takes human beings as its slaves or whatever.
So, this is GM crops.
GM crops.
GM crops.
So specifically the crops that we can design to increase yield or kind of nutrition, anything like that.
Yep. And this is since 1996.
Right.
This study has been being done. And I'll just tell you again, it was 100 billion animals. Now, I say animals instead of crops. Little known fact here is that what percentage of all animal feed in the United States do you think is made up of genetically modified crops?
That's quarter.
90%. 90%.
Really?
Yeah.
So I want to add like a little caveat to that. We know that genetic modification, we're talking about direct genetic manipulation as opposed to selective breeding.
Yes.
Okay, so 90%.
Yes. So this is a study of 100 billion animals that have been raised and reared on genetically modified crops.
I see.
Okay, so it's the study of the effects on the animals' health. And they've all been absolutely fine.
Right. So there's been no alterations to their health or
None. Well, obviously, other
fertility.
than the fact that it's better.
Yes, right? Of course, as it's designed to be. Otherwise, it would be useless and they wouldn't bother.
There has been no evidence of physical ailments, including cancer.
I see.
As a result of genetically modified.
Has there been any kind of knock-on study on how this affects human health? Obviously, that would be very difficult to study itself, considering all of the other factors.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could do that study, and you'd be relatively safe, really, in saying, well, look, your animals are completely fine. Yeah,
there'd be no reason why it would change. That's fascinating. I wonder just how much of the US public knows that.
Probably not.
I imagine they're keeping that hushed quite vigorously. But it just goes to show just how ubiquitous GM is. Really.
If it wasn't for GM, then we would have global food shortages, including all of the Western developed world. If it was not for genetically modified
I see. So it's directly in place now, right?
Yeah, it is in place in most places. Okay, just after this piece of research was published, and it was published in. The Americans call it fall. What do we call it?
Autumn.
Autumn.
Yes.
It was published in autumn of last year. And it's a meta-study. So it's a study of 1,783 other studies, right? This is the way they've managed to get so much data. Just after this was released, which country banned all GM crops?
Was it us?
Almost.
Kind
of.
Scotland? Scotland banned GM. Why?
All GM.
What have they got against GM?
Nothing based in fact, obviously.
Obviously not. That's interesting. I know nothing about Scottish crop diversity, but I can't imagine it's a great range of things. I don't think that, I don't imagine that they would need a great amount of GM crops to bolster their own crop yield. So why would they bother banning it?
What they've said is that they're refusing to gamble with the future of their 14 billion food and drink sector.
Right.
But that isn't a justification. That's just a statement of what they're doing. That doesn't explain why
they would bother. So, as far as we can see, all that GM does is improve yield and nutrition, the nutritional benefits of those who consume it, and there is no justification whatsoever for accusations of ill effects.
Let me read you just a couple of the other statements that they're making as justification to demonstrate how empty it is.
Okay.
And they've said Scotland is known around the world for our beautiful natural environment, and banning growing genetically modified crops will protect and further enhance our clean green status. Now that doesn't actually mean anything.
No.
That means nothing.
Common press released kind of rhetoric,
because it kind of implies that in some way genetic modification is not clean or green.
Well, it's going back to the old argument of it's unnatural, as though that means anything either.
Exactly, as though that means something as well. And again, we'll do a show on this just to kind of unpack some of those issues, and we'll try and get some different perspectives on that debate as well. That would be interesting. And then they went on to say, and this irritates me, there was no evidence of demand for GM crops among consumers in Scotland.
Right.
The Scottish Government has a long-standing concern about GM crops. Now, they've said this concern shouldn't be dismissed lightly. I agree with them. It shouldn't be dismissed lightly, which is why 1,783 reports of 100 billion animals were conducted over 10 years to show that it's completely safe.
Well,
And you can't expect a consumer to have a degree in genetic engineering, can you?
No.
You can't expect a consumer to understand why this would be a good
Apparently you can't trust the Scottish Government either.
Oh dear.
Great. I think that catches up, really, with the majority of the lovely news that's been going on over the summer.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that brings us to the close of this show.
But we'll be back in a week's time, 7 o'clock next
Same time next Saturday.
Yeah.
Absolutely feel free to write in. In the meantime, we'll be monitoring the social networking channels.
We will.
So, absolutely get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you.
And hopefully we'll have guests. We haven't quite decided yet whether we're going to want to spend a little bit more time unpacking some news, but we may well just have a bit of a debate.
Indeed. Keep an eye out. Yeah. So, thank you very much, Matt, for joining me today.
And thank you, Harry, for joining me.
It's been a good show, and I'm really glad to be back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Thanks for listening in, everybody. We're going to go out on Sam Smith, Writings on the Wall.
Have a great evening. We'll see you next week.
See ya.